know that we got music playing, but it still feels like awkward silence.
All right, everybody, we're going to start in just a few minutes. We have one or two technical issues we're trying to clear up, but we should have those done in a minute or so, and then we'll kick things off. Thank you for your patience.
Welcome to the 2021 Mayoral Candidate Forum on the Arts, presented by the Arts Council of Fort Worth. Thank you to our event sponsor, Meeting Squad, who is helping us host this event virtually and broadcast live on Facebook. Now, what we mean when we say arts: painting, sculptures, music, theater, poetry, creative lighting, audio, arts educators, the docent helping you through a museum, the person taking your ticket at a show. We are addressing all visual and performing modes of expression and the many people who make those possible. And we have a large panel and a tight schedule this afternoon, so we will only have time to address a few pre-selected questions, but please share your questions and comments in the chat box. Arts Council staff will be collecting those for follow-up with the candidates for mayor and city council, and they will continue to publish updated responses on our website and social media leading up to the May 1st election. For each topic, we will invite a leader from our local nonprofit arts organizations to share a pre-selected question. I will ask each candidate by name in random order to respond to the question, and you will have 2 minutes for your response. At 1 minute and 30 seconds, you will see a reminder that you have 30 seconds left. And at the end of your time, my video will appear and we will move on to the next candidate. Let's begin. Please briefly introduce yourself, say your name, and tell us about your relationship with the visual and performing arts. Again, you have 2 minutes. We'll begin with Mike Haynes.
Unfortunately, I don't think Mr. Haynes is able to join us as of now. So if that changes, I'll let you know, Estrus. But
all right,
for
thank
now,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next in line, we have Zeta.
I hit the unmute button successfully. Thank you so much, Estrus. I really appreciate it. My name is Zeta, and I have had the pleasure of serving District 9 as a City Council representative for the past 7 years. Before that, I served on the Zoning Commission for 6 years, and my background is in city planning, my education and training. I have an undergraduate degree in environmental studies with an emphasis in policy and planning, and a master's degree from the University of Texas at Arlington in city and regional planning. I worked for a time as a planning consultant. All of my clients were small cities throughout the Metroplex, where I served as their in-house planning staff. And I'm also the proud mother of 2 grown sons, at least they think they're grown, Kyle and Michael, who are 19 and 23. My husband, Jim, and I have been married for 30 years, and we have called Fort Worth home for the entire time that we've been married. As for my relationship with the visual and performing arts, I can share with you that I took ballet for 6 years as a child, and I participated in choir in both middle school and high school. But I've never really considered myself to be artistically talented or gifted in any way. But I am 100% dedicated to supporting those who are, and I do that in my daily life as well as the time that I've served on the council. In fact, I think that sometimes people think that maybe I work for the Public Art Council because I'm constantly sharing with people the fantastic inventory of public art that we have here in Fort Worth, and encouraging people to go and look at that art and visit it. And I also give away the commissioned works of the Public Art Commission as a gift on a regular basis. But I'd just like to thank everyone that does this important work and for the opportunity to have this important conversation here today. And I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ann. Next, Steve Pineda.
Hey, what an honor to be here today. My name is Steve Pineda.
Pineda, thank you.
Is how you say my last name. That's okay, but super honored to be here. So I am a local real estate broker and a pastor at a thriving church, sit on multiple boards here in town, private schools, and some non-profit schools. My relationship with the arts is I was in marching band. I was first chair trumpet from the 6th grade all the way through my senior year. And so I say first chair because it was the spot that everyone in band wanted to be, and my competitive nature, had me there. So I was raised in band, marching band my whole life. And so I'm excited to be on this forum and learn more of this space and how, as your future mayor, I can be a part of it.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. Next, Daniel Caldwell.
Good afternoon. My short resume since we're asked to tell a little about ourselves, I graduated from Texas A&M University in civil engineering. Public works has been my area of emphasis and interest for a long time. I also worked in schools. I became a certified teacher in 2012, and I attended law school at Texas Southern University in Houston from 2016 to 2019. My involvement in the arts would have technically started as a Boy Scout, but I still reflect on, as an undergraduate in college, taking, like Ms. Zeta, ballet, but at a slightly older age. I tend to think that the best forms of art are murals that you see outside. In Houston, they had a underpass, a bridge that would get repainted almost every week with a message for the community. And that was kind of interesting and inspiring. And I'd like to see some of the bridges in Fort Worth reflect a similar mural style of art where schools and community programs are invited to come out and paint them. Submitted a draft design that you'd like to put up on the wall and have the city and TxDOT grant permission to put a little crew of volunteers out there to make the world a more beautiful place to be. I think we should all agree to that, right? I thought I'd be out of time.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. Next, Deborah Peoples.
Okay, I'm unmuted. I'm Deborah Peoples, and I'd like to think I was born a thespian. I was born into a family, a musical family. I unfortunately can't play an instrument, but they all had jam sessions. Every one of my sisters and brothers play a musical instrument. But I chose to go into acting and went on to act not only in high school, but to major in theater at Texas Woman's University, and I earned my degree in speech. I later moved to Fort Worth and served on the board of the now defunct Sojourner True Theater, which Christy, you'll be excited to know, which I like to think of as the mom of both the Jubilee Theater and the Black Academy of Arts and Letters in Dallas. I also think I have a special place in my family because most of my family went on to become lawyers, including my sisters, but I think I had some help in developing my niece, Susan Laurie Parks, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning playwright. I stood up for her and fought to get her to go to major in theater and not go to law school. And my daughter, Channing Godfrey People, who is an award-winning filmmaker and did the play Miss Juneteenth, which was filmed here in Fort Worth. I also love the arts, all kinds of arts, and I had the honor of curating a show last year with the Arts Council. And as a labor of love, I worked on a public art project, and that was End Racism Now, that all of you in the city helped to make come to fruition. And that was all done with private dollars. So that's me.
Thank you, Deborah. Next, Cedric Kanyenda.
Hey, how you guys doing? Like Miss Deborah Peoples, I graduated from Texas Women's University with a degree in molecular biology and a master's degree in business administration. My contribution to the arts, I play the piano, I play the guitar, and in my local high school, MacArthur, I competed for several scholarships as a painter. I actually painted a mural just in front of MacArthur. There is a small library that we all competed back in 2004, and I was one of the students selected to paint. So that's about it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cedric. Next, Maddie Parker.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see some friends I haven't seen in a long time. Maddie Parker here. I am 17 years in state, federal, and local public service. I'm a practicing attorney, but most recently I've been running an education nonprofit known as the Tarrant 2 and 3 Partnership. I was really proud to serve as the chief of staff for mayor and council for about 5 years. But to dive right in as to the arts connection to myself. So I was born in Austin and raised in Hyco, Texas, a very small town. But my mother, before she had children, was a professional ballerina. And when we moved to Hyco, she decided to bring ballet and the arts to a very small community of 1,300 people and opened a dance studio there in Hyco and in Hamilton. It was an incredibly impactful part of my childhood. And truly, I really credit that experience, being a ballet dancer and thinking I wanted to go to New York at some point, for a lot of my own success. In addition to that, when I was in high school, I participated in UIL and poetry and prose. And I got a fantastic scholarship through UIL to go to the University of Texas that really made that possible for my family to afford to send me to go and do that. Sounds like much like Deborah's family, we are a musical family. We spent a lot of Thanksgivings and Christmases jam session after turkey. And I just love that part of my family. And we continue that legacy now with my husband, who's a really talented musician that likes to have a few places in amateur music. In Fort Worth specifically, there are so many wonderful arts organizations I've been proud to be a part of. From Film Fort Worth through Visit Fort Worth, the Lone Star Films Festival, the Young Patrons event through the Arts Council. And important to note is the Art Station here in Fort Worth that is an integral part of mental health provider. And our own family has sought help from the Art Station. So I mention that just because this organization touches so many different nonprofits here in Fort Worth. So just excited to get to have this opportunity to talk about the arts today. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. Next, Brian Byrd.
Thank you, Estrus. Hope everybody can hear me. And yeah, like Maddie, I'm having fun seeing everybody's faces. We've been seeing each other's yard signs for a while. Now we get to see each other. So Brian Byrd, I'm a physician, but retired businessman. I built some hospice companies and sold them. And been on council pretty much full time since 2017. So last night I was driving home from council down I-30 and I looked off to my right, which I guess is north. And I saw the Will Rogers Tower all lit up with multiple colors. And I saw on top of Dickey's Arena, you know, kind of matching colors. And I thought, that's just so nice. And it reminded me of my very first job out of college. I went to work for a venture capital firm and they sent me to the former Soviet Union. This is 1992. So this is right after all of that history was taking place, with the wall coming down and so on. And one day I was in this great town called Panevėžys, Lithuania. A beautiful town, and most of the places in Panevėžys. But I got off this bus one time, and no kidding, in a 360 all around me, it was nothing but gray cinder block and gray concrete. That was it. And it was remarkable. I took a picture of it. There wasn't an accent color. There wasn't any form, architecture, just nothing like that. And for a person who's not an artist, I realized for the first time in my life how important art was, because not having it there just was, it was kind of just dehumanized. I felt less human, I guess is the way I would put it. Anyhow, that experience has informed my decision-making on council regarding the art the last 4 years. Looking forward to the discussion today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian. And now let's talk about public funding for the arts. The city of Fort Worth currently invests about $1.9 million from the general fund into our arts industry each year through a contract with the Arts Council, primarily to distribute grants, administer the Fort Worth Public Arts Program, and manage the Fort Worth Community Arts Center. A 2012 study shows that most large cities in Texas invest more in their arts per resident than Fort Worth does. And these disparities are increasing as our city continues to grow. A national study in 2015 shows that the arts generated $450.6 million in local economic activity and supported 14,480 full-time jobs in Fort Worth. Since March of last year, a survey of 31 nonprofit arts organizations in Fort Worth shows that they have lost an estimated $40 million in revenue and over 640 full-time equivalent jobs during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, joining us today with a question for our panelists is Christy Howard, Managing Director of Jubilee Theater. Jubilee Theater was founded in 1981, and their mission is to create and produce theatrical works that give voice to the African-American experience. Welcome, Christy.
Thank you, Estra, and welcome, candidates. My question for you is, how would you work to increase the city's investment in the arts industry to meet the growing needs and to bring our funding in line with other major cities in Texas?
All right, as before, each candidate has 2 minutes, and we will kind of go in a random order. And this time we'll begin with Zeta.
Am I unmuted now? Good afternoon. I get to go twice first because the other person wasn't here, but I just want to start by saying that while we have had the incredible benefit of having some very generous families and individuals in Fort Worth that have funded the arts and made it so that the city hasn't had to put as much funding into it, those kind of dollars are not sustainable as people make different decisions about what they want to do with those additional dollars. And the interests that people have in various things ebb and flow. The city's budget has taken a hit in the last couple of budget cycles, and my priority would be to restore those funds. This would allow all the organizations that work in the arts to be more proactive in their efforts. They've been doing an incredible job with the budget that they have, but they would be able to go after providing funding in a proactive way where public arts and their partners can increase the overall economic benefit that you just referenced, which is incredible. In addition, I support the looking into the hot tax. Many cities in Texas use hot tax dollars to fund the arts. And this would be a way to bring some items that we're not allowed to fund through the bond funding that we have, more temporary and pop-up events that can be done with those hot tax dollars. And that could expand the public art and other art offerings beyond the confines of the world-class museums and institutions and performing arts venues that we have into the actual neighborhoods across the entire city that have historically been underserved in this capacity. And finally, as mayor, I would encourage all of us to frequent arts institutions, commission pieces from local artists, go to live events, because doing these things, participating, is just as important as giving money. So I think that we need to do these things more often, not just when we have people visiting from out of town, but treat our city as we treat places that we go for special occasions when we're visiting and we're tourists. We can do that in our own city because we have some amazing places to visit and frequent and support.
Thank you, Ann. Next, Maddie Parker.
Thanks, everybody. So I'm going to throw out a few numbers to get us started, and then I'll answer your question specifically, Estras. You make some good points. So in the North Texas economy, that's Dallas, Fort Worth, we know that the creative industry contributes about $34 billion. It's a phenomenal amount of money that we know is contributing to our local economy. And I strongly believe that it's going to be reliance on these creative industries that really take Fort Worth and separate us apart as we move out of COVID and emerge out of what has been a really difficult year and a half. For the city of Fort Worth, I understand the city budget, and Ann articulated well the struggles that the city has had and how we might need to push additional funds into that. So there's a few different sources. Ann talked about the hot tax, really collaborating with Visit Fort Worth on what that could look like. Additionally, we know that we've received a tremendous amount of money in CARES Act funding, an additional amount that's about to come down. $185 million is an estimate that a large metro city like Fort Worth may receive. I know that there are a lot of needs, infrastructure included, and what that money should go towards, but I do think as a community, we need to ask the tough questions and understand how hard hit we've been impacted. Last thing I'd like to say is how are we going to think differently about arts in Fort Worth? We want to find additional ways to ensure that our artists and our creative community can absolutely successfully stand on their own, become an economic driver as individual artists. And I think one way we could think about doing that is creating what you could call a cultural arts division in the economic development department. And I think in the beginning, you don't actually have to add additional paid staff. There are fantastic leaders in the arts community that would love to step up and be more integrated in the economic conversation, and the critical importance that the arts plays across the Fort Worth economy. I know personally that it's a driver for innovation and entrepreneurship. And I think there's a lot of things we can do with many of the nonprofits that are represented here today to understand how important you are to our local economy, as well as arts and culture. And last thing I'll say, let's remember the importance that arts provides to making sure all people feel welcome and connected to this community. And I think if we are intentional about that and telling the story, it's naturally in a better ability to entice city councils and mayors, city management into additional dollars towards the arts. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you, Maddie. Next, Cedric Kanyenda.
Well, I do believe that the city does not spend much in the art. Arts feed the soul. And we need to work with the city council, city leaders, and everybody else involved to come up with a better solution to provide funding. Because those events are not going to create themselves. We need funding to create those events that will attract people to come to our city, to come to those events. The city of Irving spends way much more in the arts than Fort Worth does, and Fort Worth is the biggest city. So we need to look real hard into how we spend our money and come up with a solution to bring more funding and create more events. That's my take on that.
Thank you, Cedric. Next, Daniel Caldwell. Unmute, Daniel.
The arts is in kind by alleviating permitting restrictions in the city code, which might prohibit posting of artistic signs. I mentioned before that I like to see art outdoors where it can be enjoyed by everyone. To that extent, I find that, well, projects done in the public space usually require a permit before you can get started. My understanding of how that works, though, is that it has a severe chilling effect on free speech and on artistic expression, so that a better mechanism for handling public art in many instances would, especially for medium or small art projects, would be to allow retroactive permitting, where you can go ahead and do it so long as the project is not excessively large. And if it's still of a size that would require a permit, you can go get the permit after the fact, take a picture, go to code enforcement and say, please approve this, because it's a contribution to the community at that point.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. Next, Steve Pineda. Go ahead, Steve.
So so a quick response to this would be, I would personally like to see how we can reallocate money from other areas within our budgets that we could invest in arts that are truly impacting Fort Worth in itself. So very quick response here is this: I want to see the budget, see how we can reallocate money to things that are a lot more effective than wasting money on other things that aren't really impacting our city. So I would personally work with people like you, and then want to hear what your need is, what's needed. You know, if I'm honest with you, this isn't my area of expertise, but it's yours. And so I would invite conversations with you, see the budget, see how we can reallocate money to make sure we're investing in programs, investing in things that are truly making an impact in our city.
Thank you, Steve. Next, Brian Byrd.
Am I unmuted? Okay, it looks like it. Good, thank you. Yeah, I'll be brief. Estes, I think in addition to the 1.9 we were talking about, there's also funding that gets sent to the arts through our bond programs. I think that's been mentioned as well. And I'd be in favor of that percentage staying the same, but growing as the city budget grows, and as the bond packages grow. I think that that would see an increase in sort of a proportional increase in funding. The HOT situation right now is a little tenuous given how specifically COVID went right after hospitality. We need to see that recover before we looked at that for art funding, but we can take a look at it. And I'll yield my time to any of these other good candidates here. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And next, Deborah Peoples.
So, Estes and team, I'm about to put on my business hat. I think you all know I spent 34 years in business, and I was a vice president, and I understand profit and loss and revenue projections. And so we need to stop thinking of art as extra. It's not. In Fort Worth, you know, we call ourselves the city of cowboys and culture. I hate that because I think we're the city of cowboys with culture. And tourism is a major contributor to revenue in this city. And so we have to look at, when we look at ways to drive increased revenue, it is through our art institutions and the many things that we offer. And so I think when you sit down with people and start understanding the relationship between art and tourism and dollars, it becomes an easy sell. And so I know we've talked about the hot tax and that, but as mayor, I'd like to think of myself as the arts mayor, because I want to increase investment in the arts. And it's an investment because it's going to give back to us in terms of tourism dollars. And so, you know, a percentage of that hotel tax revenue should go to public art, because that's going to bring many more people to the city. And those folks are going to be spending dollars. And we need art all over the city. As the 13th largest city in the United States, we need to be ensuring that we are giving people something to see and something to do when they get here. So I want to manage art, place it where it deserves when we look at ways to bring revenue to this city.
Thank you, Deborah. And now let us begin to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And across Fort Worth, art institutions and artists are finding creative ways to highlight our city's diversity, create more inclusive spaces, and close opportunity gaps in every Fort Worth zip code. The city's public art program brings our community together to depict diverse histories and share visions of the future. With recent projects including Chronicles of Como by Adam Neese and Remnants of 1965 by Riley Holloway. Programs supported by Arts Council grants bring hundreds of arts experiences to Title I schools and library branches across the entire city. Across our city, there are fresh new murals celebrating our Northside High School mariachis, memorializing Tatiana Jefferson, encouraging voter participation, and proclaiming End Racism Now. In the Cultural District, the Fort Worth Community Arts Center introduces nearly 80,000 annual visitors to over 500 local and regional visual artists, and dozens of performing ensembles each year, making the arts more accessible for performers and patrons. Another critically important arts center in Fort Worth's North Side is Arts de la Rosa, which was founded in 1999 with the mission to preserve, promote, and present Latino arts, culture, history, and lives in North Texas. The nonprofit operates the historic Rose Marine Theater and the adjacent gallery at the Rose Marine. Here with us to ask our next question is William Giron, Executive Director of Artes de la Rosa. Welcome, William.
Thank you, Esdras, and good afternoon, mayoral candidates. We see from these examples that the arts are advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in our community. What have you seen that reflects this, and how can Fort Worth's mayor help this grow?
And again, we want to invite you to 2 minutes, and we will begin with Steve.
Hi, so can you repeat the question again?
Sure.
I think my connection went in
No
and
problem.
out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. What have you seen that reflects this, and how can Fort Worth's mayor help this grow?
Awesome. Okay, well, look at this. Fort Worth is a diverse city. And so one of the things I feel we need to be more vocal about is how amazingly diverse we are as a city. And so as mayor, in many ways, we are able to use our influence in order to celebrate that in many ways, you know. And so one of my favorite things about Fort Worth is being able to truly see the culture we have within Fort Worth, you know. So once again, being able to use the influence, the voice a mayor has in order to celebrate and bring awareness to how diverse we really are, talk about the arts, people involved and so on, you know, just bring awareness to a city of how beautiful Fort Worth really is.
Thank you, Steve. Next, Deborah.
I think you know how much I love art, but I think I want to use the example of the End Racism Now mural to just talk about an example of what happens when you bring people together. While that was an idea that I dreamed of, it could not have happened without all the fantastic artists across this city. That, Cedric and Leticia Huckabee came on board with their vision for it, but artists from all over the city came to help draw that. But more importantly, citizens of all colors, all religions, everything came to paint and to write their names. It was an effort that brought everybody together. And that's what that's what art does. It brings people together. It gives us a chance to see that we are more alike than we are different. And as mayor, it is my responsibility to be out there and encourage it. We need to have the mayor when we have these spontaneous projects like Juan Blasquez and the murals that he did on the north side. We needed to have been there at the Tatiana Jefferson mural. So I believe arts serves as that bridge to bring us all together, and we need to do more to not only celebrate it, but encourage it.
Thank you, Deborah. Next, Daniel.
I asked a question in the chat to make sure I understood Mr. Giron's question correctly.
Yes, good. Let me just repeat it. So based on what Esdras gave some examples previously, so the whole thing is we see that these examples that Esdras had given previously, that the arts are advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in our community. What have you seen that reflects this, and how can Fort Worth's mayor help this grow?
You say accessibility. And as I think about the various bond projects, I think also about engineering, because just as a beautiful, just as something that is beautiful can improve the quality of life, something that is functional can also be beautiful. So how would the mayor help art advance diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility? Well, we have the ongoing bond projects that we can use. And as they are being implemented, we can ensure that those projects are not only functional, but visually appealing. And we can ensure that those facilities that are built, such as the ones that are coming to mind are Fort Worth ISD bond projects. So those schools would be available for events and activities in the community that would be inclusive and represent the whole spectrum of society and the population in Fort Worth. And I know that even as they are intended to lift up their participants most, a rising tide raises all ships. I'm sure you've heard that before. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you, Daniel. Makes good sense. Next, Anne.
Thank you, Esdras. Those are all really great examples of some things that we're doing right now and that I've been able to support and enjoy during my service on council. One of my greatest pleasures in the service that I've done thus far as a council member has been personally involved in projects across the city and throughout the district. When I very first got on council, I was asked to be one of the stars in an Acting with the Stars annual fundraising event for Stage West. And I was told that both my predecessors had done this, so it wasn't really an option to say no. And while this was totally out of my comfort zone, it was well worth the discomfort that I felt doing that in order to support a great theater in our community. In addition, I've been involved in some major installations of permanent pieces, such as an artist designed bridge that is being located in South Hills neighborhood. And right now under design is a project for a piece of art going into Rosemont Park with hands-on involvement from residents in that community. In addition, murals created in collaboration with local artists, the Lenora Butler Rolla Museum annual juried art show. All of these are examples that I've had the pleasure of supporting the growth of this art in Fort Worth. As mayor, I would prioritize these types of permanent installations and collaborations with diverse institutions, both large and small, to bring art to all of our communities and neighborhoods. When we started out to design the artist design bridge in South Hills, there were residents that questioned that investment in their own neighborhood, and I assured them that all neighborhoods deserve art. So when we participate in picking artists and giving input on design, the council members always offered a voting seat on those committees, and I've always participated fully, but offered up that voting seat to the residents that live in the immediate area. And in an effort to grow and expand the communities and individuals that are engaged in art throughout our city, that would be a top priority for me as mayor.
Thank you, Anne. Next, Brian.
So there's two that come to mind. The first is, at the new Como Community Center, there's a great art project right across the front of it. And it's depicting people. And my favorite part of that is there's an older person kind of bending over, welcoming a younger person. And when we dedicated that building, we got to see that happening, right in our midst. And it was art showing us the importance of knowing who we are, knowing where we've come from, knowing where we're going, the importance of children and passing down traditions and values. And I just thought that was so wonderful. And the other one's already been mentioned. I think the Tatiana mural is so powerful and moving. The two saddest and lowest days on council for me, and I know all of us in the last 4 years, were when Officer Garrett Hull was shot and killed in duty, and then when Tatiana was killed in her home. And the mural is helpful to me. It reminds us that we need to honor her and her family. It reminds us of the work that we still have to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Next, Maddie.
So I'll talk about the two pieces that come to mind first. First is in Lake Como, the Como community, and a beautiful piece that honors a longtime Como community member, William Wilburn, and of course, Eamon Carter. I love that piece because I watched the community step up and dictate what they wanted to see to make sure they were promoting their own history and heritage and legacy. And I think it's going to be a tremendous asset for that community moving forward, for us to remember who we are, who we've been, and where we want to be in the future. I'd be remiss if I didn't say it's ironic to me that we're talking about this tough question when you had these horrible slangs popping up earlier, right? I think we can all agree there's no place in that. And it's certainly here. And I know that each of us on this call believe that art is a way to heal and to change the rhetoric. Another favorite piece that I have that Arnaldo did in the Northside community called Convivio, excuse me. Steve can correct me in a moment, which means coexist. And if you haven't seen that piece, you absolutely need to. My kids have seen it and love it as well. And then lastly, I think we need to remember that art is often a lived experience. And I remember February, just before COVID hit, my husband and I got to go a night out with a bunch of friends to Twilight Lounge, where the Squeeze Box Bandits were playing. And it was a phenomenal evening of an incredibly diverse crowd of people having fun and dancing and singing. And that's the Fort Worth I know and love, right? And I think that art really brings that to fruition. And to specific to your question, William, I think that all of these things we're talking about advancing diversity and equity and making people feel more welcome, I think art is absolutely a critical part of that. And I'm excited to further that opportunity as mayor.
Thank you, Maddie. Next, Cedric.
I had to ponder long and hard on this question. Because frankly, diversity is not really expressed in the arts in Fort Worth. Let's be frank. When a city spends less than $2 million in the arts, how can we expect any expression of diversity in any kind of art? Although it is true that the city of Fort Worth is diverse, you can see when you go to a different district and neighborhood. But to answer the question, frankly, I don't see diversity being expressed in the arts in Fort Worth because we don't spend much. And there are not a lot of events that are being organized within the city limits to promote diversity, to promote art, to allow artists to express their feelings, their emotions, beside the Tatiana Jefferson mural. And those are small. In order to be noticed, we need to do more to do that. That's my take.
Thank you, Cedric. And now let's talk about arts in community development. Across the country, municipal governments find success in leveraging the unique skills of their creative workforce to problem solve and improve their cities. Some city governments place visual artists in city departments. Others establish an arts liaison in the mayor's office. And still others lead initiatives that bring arts leaders into decision-making processes. Fort Worth is considered to be the 13th largest city in the United States, and it remains one of the fastest growing. As our city recovers from the pandemic and continues its remarkable growth, we will need creative solutions to new problems as they arise. Here, with a question about the arts and community development, is Andrew Walker, director of the Eamon Carter Museum of American Art. The Eamon Carter opened in 1961. The museum's mission is to collect, preserve, and exhibit the finest examples of American art, and to serve an educational role through exhibitions, publications, and programs devoted to the study of American art. Andrew.
Cedric, thank you so much. And I so appreciate this forum. I want to honor all of the candidates in their efforts that they've made throughout their career so far, and the prospect that they hold to serve our city with their leadership. The question for you all is this: as our city recovers from the pandemic, how will you ensure that the arts are part of the conversation regarding city planning, economic development, and neighborhood revitalization initiatives?
Thank you, Andrew. Again, you have 2 minutes, and we will begin with Daniel.
Repeat the question. I will ask you to repeat.
Daniel, absolutely. It is this: as our city recovers from the pandemic, how will you ensure, as mayor, that the arts are part of the conversation regarding city planning, economic development, and neighborhood revitalization initiatives?
Well, I would say it sounds like you want a member of the Arts Council on a number of the neighborhood and city committees. I suppose one of the roles of the mayor would be to help coordinate when vacancies open up on committees, having a member of the Arts Council apply for that opening. Rather than necessarily having to create a new vacancy specifically designated to a member of the Arts Council, openings occur that members of the Arts Council and art teachers, musicians would already be eligible for based on where they live. So we could promote awareness within the Arts Council and the schools and the community centers of when a vacancy occurs, so that anyone interested in the arts could represent the art community on those committees.
Thank you, Daniel. Next, Cedric.
Actually, I do believe what we need to do is transparency. We need to promote, because if you don't know the opportunities available to you, you will not reach out, you will not apply for it. So as a mayor, I would like to promote and increase accessibility, as DC Caldwell just eloquently said, to everyone in our city, to make sure that everyone who can apply has that opportunity to do so. I believe that is it pretty much.
Thank you, Cedric. Next, Steve.
Yeah, so my response is, once again, the only way we can come up with solutions is talking about it, so having forums like that with people of understanding in what's needed within this context, and see how we can best support this community. I personally will make sure that we have forums with leadership within the arts, like yourself, like the people in this forum, so that we can talk about solutions of how best and what's needed to move forward in our recovery from what we've experienced. You know, once again, we have to talk about it. We have to bring it to light. We have to highlight it. And so again, the arts isn't my expertise, but it's yours. And so inviting you into the conversations to bring solutions as to you, the expert. What do you feel is needed within the arts, and what can we as the city do to support you in effective ways?
Thank you, Steve. Next, Brian.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I'll just mention one area in the Las Vegas Trail area. We were able to renovate a couple of old buildings and create a new community center. It was really cool. And we decided to spend a little extra money and create on the front portion of that building a new, it's really a beautiful canopy. And it has some function to it, right? Because it provides some shade, but it also, let me just tell you what, to say that it increases the outside visual appearance of that building, the street appeal, would be just an understatement. And it speaks to the community, right? It speaks to the community that we value you. We value this building. This is your place, and making it beautiful is important to us because we know that's important to you. And we're also working with the Arts Council on an art project to go in the Las Vegas Trail area, in another part of the general area. And you know, that project will bring beauty to it, and it's another example of what we're saying to a part of the city that had been previously neglected. We're saying, we see you, we love you, we're for you, and beauty matters. If I get philosophical here, I'll say, let's define beauty and have a conversation on that. But I think we all know beauty matters and just makes us better. It makes me better. And I need plenty of getting better, I promise that. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Next, Anne.
Thanks, Estras. I think I'll start off by just saying that we're really fortunate to have arts funding baked into our bond funding. And while some have questioned doing that, the continuation of that funding would be an absolute priority for me. And we've had a question come up recently about the new city hall, which is a big project, but it's not a bond project. And so the idea of having some art component to that, I think, is an important discussion to have. But engagement of communities and individuals that are impacted in conversations about growth and development and redevelopment and revitalization are absolutely essential. And this speaks to the nerdy planner in me for sure. Having these conversations through the lens of art is an accessible way to engage folks that might not necessarily have participated in the past or might have some reluctance to participation. And there are numerous examples of those kind of conversations that have happened surrounding the creation and design and development of parks and redevelopment that has occurred in some parts of the city, but not in all parts of the city. So what needs to occur, I think, is something that replicates that everywhere so that everyone has the benefit of those kind of conversations in their own communities and has a say in them. The Arts Commission has recently updated their long-range plan, and they did some pop-up hands-on engagement efforts with the community where individuals were asked to give their ideas on little wireframe houses using Post-it notes. So that's an example. But proactively reaching out through the city planning department, the economic development department, using the neighborhood engagement offices to utilize this type of hands-on engagement out in the communities throughout the city would be an absolute priority for me. And I think just last week, there was such an event that happened at Black Coffee where the community design Fort Worth is working with residents in a community to talk about improvements to bus shelters and bus stops in the poly community. And having those kind of conversations in those communities is what makes it accessible to everyone.
Thank you, Anne. Next, Deborah.
So Estrus, I love this question. And Andrew, you wanted to know, how do we recover from the pandemic? So let me just tell you, I live in these communities that you all are talking about. I live in them every day. I am all over this city, and my family likes to joke that I do walkabouts. I go all over the city. And so I don't confine myself to one area of the city. So let me just tell you, so there are two ways, Andrew, that we recover from this pandemic using art. One is, I've talked about the business perspective. When people realize that art brings tourism, increased art brings tourism, we're going to use art to get people to our city to see that. And so that's the first thing from a business perspective. But next, how do we heal spiritually? How do we, as communities all over this city, heal? And that's the whole idea of inclusion. You know, I serve on a committee that is working to bring an African-American museum to Fort Worth. We start putting these art installations all over the city. So I drive to the north side to see the murals. I drive to Stop 6. I drive to the museum district. I drive to Como. That is how you build communities and bring people together, by making art accessible all over this city. And so, you know, that is one of the things that as mayor, I will do. I will be out there. Look, I know how to weld a paintbrush, and I know, listen, don't laugh at me, but I still have a little rhythm. So I get out there and dance. And Barbara Sanders will tell you I can't sing, but I have tried to sing. So I think we have to be more participatory, but we can recover from this pandemic using art to help build dollars in this city.
Excellent. Thank you, Deborah. Next, Maddie.
Thank you, Estrus. So to be blunt, I think it's going to take really bold leadership. Art absolutely is economic development. And as Deborah alluded to, it is a critical part of tourism in our industry here in Fort Worth, Texas, that continues to be a leading factor in bringing us out of this pandemic. We know that after the Great Recession, we saw the growth in creative industry jobs grow by about 9.1%. Compare that to the regular economy of 6%. I think you're going to see that in spades in this economy. You can use numbers to convince the business community to step up and say the creative industries is going to bring Fort Worth, Texas out of the out of the recession. And furthermore, ensure that we have even greater success in telling the Fort Worth story. That important critical part about cowboys and culture in Fort Worth. The other thing I'll remind you is we have to be bold in leadership because our nonprofits have been hit so hard in this pandemic. I'll use Texas Ballet Theater as an example. Not only have they been shut down and their dancers unemployed, but then the snowpocalypse or snowvid or whatever we want to call it happened, and they've lost their dance floors, right? My mom continues to take dance classes there now in her 70s. And the community is really reeling with what to do in the performing arts sector. So we know that $42.5 billion have been lost across the United States just in fine arts and performing arts alone. So it's going to take bold leadership. I mentioned earlier, tangible solutions, creating that cultural aspect of our economic development department. Again, I think there are probably people on this call that would absolutely love to raise their hands and integrate the arts into every economic development decision we make to ensure it's at the forefront of our decisions, and understanding that's how a city like Fort Worth, Texas comes out on top and shines brighter even after COVID-19.
Thank you, Maddie. And now let's talk a little bit about ongoing commitment. And y'all have been phenomenal and insightful. And so now we have one key question from Karen Wiley, President and CEO of the Arts Council of Fort Worth. The Arts Council was founded in 1963, and its mission to create an environment that promotes, nurtures, and supports the arts in our community. Karen.
Thank you, Estrus. I appreciate you walking us through this event this evening. And I would like to say a very special thank you to all of our candidates for spending the time with us. The arts are so important, and that is our industry, and that's where our heart lies. And so with that, my question to you, if you are elected as our new mayor, will you commit to join us together next year at this time and share with us an update on how your administration is supporting the arts.
All right. So again, this time, instead of 2 minutes, because I think you can be very succinct in answering Karen's question, we'll give you 30 seconds. We begin with Deborah.
So Karen, it won't take me a year. You're going to see me in the community from day one promoting the arts. And I think, as you can see on the wall behind me, I love arts. When in the Snowmageddon, when my pipes burst, I was saving pictures, not furniture. So I will commit not only to doing it on year one, but day one, being with you.
Thank you, Deborah. And next, Ann.
Thanks. I was just going to say that's the easiest question of all. Yes, absolutely. And I, like Deborah said, would pledge to not wait a year. Even now, I'm in the community every day talking to people who are working in the arts, and I would continue to do that in any role that I play in this city going forward. So it's an ongoing conversation that must go on much more than every year basis. So I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Next, Brian.
This was a great little forum. This is kind of our first one, and thanks Carlo and everybody for setting it up. And Estes, man, you were just so affirming all the way through this. I would be talking and I'd kind of look at you to be going like this, and I felt good. So thanks for doing that. And you did that for everybody else too. So the answer is an unqualified yes. You guys are very important to us and what we're trying to do here. Thanks for letting me be a part of things.
Thank you, Brian. Next, Steve.
Absolutely. I apologize. I am not on video. I'm racing to an appointment. My schedule got double booked. But yes, I commit to absolutely work with every single one of you, and I'm excited about doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next, Daniel.
We all seem to agree to working with the Arts Council. I see that consensus, and I was just pulling up Wesley's phone number to put it in the chat. So yes, of course.
Thank you, Daniel. And next, Maddie.
Absolutely. This has been fun. Really important conversation. I love that it's been specific to the arts, which is important. I think maybe if we do this in the future, we need to absolutely include different members of our youth community, making sure they understand we're supporting the arts. So that might be something fun. And let's be honest, kids are usually cuter than us anyway. So might be a good opportunity to shake things up. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Maddie. Next, Cedric.
Definitely, I'll be supporting the art on day one. There is a saying, a person without music is a person without a soul. So a city without art is a city without a soul as well. So we have to do it on day one. And that's what I commit to do.
Excellent. Thank you, Cedric. And y'all have been phenomenally efficient with time. And many candidate forums, that's not exactly how they roll. So great gratitude for how succinct your responses have been. And what we would like to do, not to stretch it out, but we know that you have some other thoughts that weren't captured in our questions. So I'm going to extend 2 minutes each for any closing remarks you have. And I don't want to overcomplicate the order, so I'm just going to reverse the way we did this last one, but trusting that there are several areas and several comments that you can close with. We want to extend that. So we're going to start with the way we ended. So Cedric, what closing remarks would you have as we wrap this up?
Yes, I'd like for everyone to know the reason why someone will come to our city and make the city their home, bring a young family here and raise their kids. It has to be a memorable experience when someone comes to our city. Why will someone come to Fort Worth? Is it for our museum? Is it for musical, theater, symphony. It is my experience that every time I go to a new city, I like to sightsee, visit what the city has to offer. Let us ponder, ask ourselves a question. What do we as Fort Worth bring to visitors? And I'd like to close there.
Thank you, Cedric. And next, Maddie, what are your closing remarks?
I'll just close with reminding everyone, why we're all probably running, that we want to make Fort Worth an even better place and take us forward, that we don't have all the answers. And I think it really does take the expertise of folks that are represented here today, both community members, arts council, board members, nonprofits, to sit down at a table and have the tough conversations of what it takes to move the community forward. I'm incredibly energized by conversations like this. I learn something every day. I learn something from my fellow mayoral candidates that I'll remember. And in closing, just remember the things that I say today are real. I have really had the pleasure of serving at City Hall and working with many of the folks at the Arts Council. And I will continue to have that working relationship as mayor or as a community member, either one. Really appreciate the time today.
Thank you, Maddie. Daniel, your closing remarks.
Well, early voting starts April 19th. It hasn't come up yet in this forum, but since we're all running for election, I often find we forget to mention when the elections are and where to find out information on the elections. I recommend going to the Tarrant County website. The easiest one for me is gisit.tarrantcounty.com /TCVL, I think, Tarrant County Voter Lookup. But April 19th is the first day to vote in person. I'd like to ask for collaboration between the candidates. This has been a good hour and change getting to know y'all, but I'd like to be able to work together on the ideals and values that we have in common and share. That is what unity is about, right? We don't just want a 51% majority, we want the community to come together. And I'd like to do that with y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Steve, your closing remarks.
Awesome. Very honored about this. It was fun. I love seeing like Brian said, it was awesome. The first time we're all in one group. It was a lot of fun. What an honor. And I concur with Maddie. You guys are the experts in this field, and I look forward to working with each and every single one of you moving forward. Thank you for the opportunity here.
Thank you, Steve. Brian, your closing remarks.
Yeah, great. I didn't get to talk much about business, so I'll just finish with that. I think one of the world's greatest ever CEOs was Steve Jobs, and one of the things he was famous for was putting beauty into his products, and even so much that if you opened up an Apple laptop, on the inside of it, it had a form to it that none of the other products in the marketplace had. In an environment of limited resources, and that's where all of us operate, but we need to continue to make the case from the mayor's office and council and other city leadership to the business community and to the taxpayers that this is worth it, that it creates business, that it creates tourism, that it creates jobs, and it creates beauty. Once again, thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Brian. Anne, your closing remarks.
I think I just want to highlight the one thing that I talked about a little bit about engagement and being involved. I would encourage all of us to, when it is safe to do so, after COVID, obviously, or in a safe manner now, to go to live events and do these things. Participating is important. Not only does that enrich the artists and the musicians and all of those that are involved on that side of it, it enriches our lives as well. So as important as it is to support these organizations and give money, it's important to participate. So I would just encourage us to participate by frequenting these art institutions, commissioning pieces from our local artists, and going to live events when possible.
Thank you, Ann. Deborah, closing remarks.
So to Estrus and everybody on this call, I will not sing to you. But one of my favorite songs is there's a song that says, there is joy, 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 joy down in my heart, down in my soul. Art is a universal healer. It can bring our communities together. It is a universal gatherer of people. And so when you talk about inclusion, it also can solve our financial problems as a city. And so I urge you all, the reason I love this call so is it gives me an opportunity to make this commercial for why art should receive more funding and why we all should be participating and we all should be together in our goal to make Fort Worth one of the greatest art cities in the world. So thank you all for having me. And I just love this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Deborah, and thank each of our candidates. Outstanding, 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 worthy of a standing ovation. A few reminders, and then we'll, as we wrap, again, early voting is April 19th through April 27th. Election day is Saturday, May 1st, 2021. The last day to register to vote is April 1st, and that's no fooling. Fort Worth residents can register to vote online, and you'll see in the chat. We want you to stay tuned as the Art Council shares responses from City Council candidates regarding their plans for the arts in Fort Worth. We want you to learn more about the arts in Fort Worth by following the Arts Council on Facebook at Arts Fort Worth or by signing up for their monthly email newsletter and calendar at artsfortworth.org. A recording of this program is available to view and share on the Arts Council's Facebook page. And remember, public art matters.
Once again, I was glad to meet everyone.